All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And as always, I have an amazing warrior guest to introduce to you, James O'Malley, and I'll do that in a second. But first, let me tell you why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses. They're all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is absolutely no exception, James P. O'Malley. And I'm not going to keep doing the P all the time, so just so you know. But James P. O'Malley, Patrick, I think is the middle name, is an awesome warrior. He's a father, life and communication coach, filmmaker, BeeKonnected Expert and Elite 100 coach. And his 35-year warrior journey has taken him all over the world, throughout the United States, Brazil, and Holland. He has supported, supervised, produced, and directed more than 1,000 projects for a wide range of businesses, agencies, creators, entertainers, medical professionals, and legal professionals, while raising four magnificent, now adult children. During the past decade, James has had the opportunity to impact more than 500 people as a communication and life coach, and is a senior mentor in the Givers University. Interested to hear about that. His most recent role as a BeeKonnected Expert and Elite 100 coach is enabling him to use his unique value to train and coach BeeKonnected members to grow their network, launch their shows, and achieve continuous business success. James O'Malley, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. How are things in your world today? I believe you're in Brazil, right?
Yep. Yes, I'm in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And David, thank you so much. It is a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I mean, you are a true giver because what you do is so wonderful, so helpful, so valuable. So thank you. I'm proud to be here.
Hey,
And
it's my pleasure, James. I as I told you before we got started, I took a little bit of a hiatus while I got another bionic part put in for my other hip. And as I said, I'm at my stand desk today and doing well after a couple weeks. So yeah, I'm getting back into the swing of the warrior versus zombie thing. And thank you for being gracious enough to help me in my re-entry. So tell me about what things are like in Rio today. I'm sitting here thinking, do I really want to go outside in Dallas? It's beautiful and sunny, but it's like walking into a blow dryer here.
yeah, I know. I have been to Texas before during the summer, and it is a serious, serious situation. It's a lot of heat, a beautiful state, gorgeous place, but the summers really test you. And right now here in Rio, it is spring, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming out of winter, although winter is kind of like a summer day in Milwaukee, not the really hot, muggy ones, but it generally is cool at night and sunny during the day. So today is a sunny day. It's beautiful, but it's a lot more temperate than Texas is. That's for sure.
So your
Yeah,
frame of comparison there, you just evoked Milwaukee. Or is that where you originally hail from, or is it?
yeah, that's where I was born. That's where I was born, and
Okay.
that becomes my reference. It's where I was born and mostly raised. I was born to a Chicago Irish. That's the O'Malley. My dad was from Chicago, and my mom is from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And so I'm a Brazilian American dual citizen by birth. Although I was raised and spoke English most of most of my childhood, and only learned Portuguese when we came and lived in Brazil from 78 to 80. Which is when my dad took 2 years of sabbatical. He was a philosophy professor at Marquette University. In fact, both my parents were teachers. My mom, who's still living, my dad has passed on, and my mom is still living here in Brazil, and she is a retired university music professor and concert pianist, and
Wow.
he was a professor of philosophy for most of his life. And so I grew up in a household of teachers and educators. Never thought that I would really be an educator. I thought that I would be an artist, because since I was tiny, I was always drawing. And then when I got, before we moved to Brazil, I'd say in the early 70s, because we moved to Brazil in 78, and I got into photography and actual darkroom processing and printing, and loved it. So from drawing, I then expanded into photography, which then led to, while living in Brazil, getting a job on a US feature film that shot there. I was going on 16 years old. It was 1980, and a crew of a mix of Americans and a British camera crew came down to shoot a film that was in the epic of Grizzly and Jaws and all of that, and it was called Savage Harvest, based on a story of a drought in Africa, and the lions wreak havoc on the plantation owners, starring Tom Skerritt and Michelle Phillips,
Tom Skerritt.
of the Pampas. Just a great cast, really great cast. And I got to work with them.
James, let's do this. I can tell you're getting into your story here, and I do want to give the audio audience a quick break. I'm fascinated already by hearing a little bit of some of your journey, and feature films and all that stuff is kind of exciting. But what I'd like to do is, for the audio audience, take a quick break, hear a little of our theme song again, by Ricky Jean Wright, called "It's Not the Getting There." And then we'll come back, and I want to hear from how you got started. It sounds like we've got a little snippet of that and some of the introduction. And let's talk about how you got from there to where you are today, and some of the things you've overcome. So let's take a quick break, hear a little of our theme song, and we'll be right back with James O'Malley and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we are back, and I'm loving this, James. We're chomping at the bit. Let's get into that story. So you started it. The thing I loved about hearing already is I have a daughter who's an artist. She studied art and nonprofit business, and just graduated back in the zombie apocalypse back in 2020. From college, and so she's got an artistic bent. I got a son-in-law who's now he's working on a documentary and doing a couple of things like that. So I know they'll both be fascinated to hear, and probably many other warriors. But let's come back to where we kind of were. So you started off born in Milwaukee. Your parents, or your mom is still there. She's retired. Your dad's passed. And you kind of got into the whole filmmaking thing down in Rio. So let's pick up there. Tell me a little bit about how that all went down.
So we moved to Brazil in 78. My dad had been teaching nonstop, and so he had the right to 2 sabbaticals from Marquette University. And so we went down there with the plan of spending 1 year in Brazil. And we had the choice of either running with the dogs, as my dad put it, or studying with a tutor. And I wanted to run with the dogs, but my other 3 siblings all said, no, we don't want to lose a year in school. So he brought a tutor down, an American tutor, to do all of our classwork and all that. So we lived in a small town outside of Rio, in the mountains outside of Rio, called Vassouras, which back during the colonial empire was the capital of coffee, which would have made it the world capital of coffee. But now, because of all that plantation, it's pretty much sterile, just for cattle to graze on and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it's a great town where most of my mom's family had vacation homes, weekend homes, and all that. So we spent a year there, and this plays into the movie. And then after that year, we then moved to Rio to spend a year in Rio. And at that point, my Portuguese was getting pretty fluent. And that was wonderful, because I knew very little Portuguese when before we came to Brazil. and my mom didn't teach us Portuguese, unfortunately, but I learned it while we were there. And then I would keep going back to that town. And then one of the times I returned to the town, there was a kid. He was a very poor kid, but wonderful. One of my best friends. He worked hard and knew everybody. And he comes up and he's like, Jamie, there's a film crew here. They're making a movie. They all speak English. I made friends with them. Do you want to meet them? And I was like, yeah, Hobson. Yeah, I'd love to meet him. So he introduces me to one of the young actors, Sean Stevens, who actually at the time was a Tiger Beat teen idol. I mean, this is dating us a little bit. But we became fast friends, and he invited me to a party they were having there at one of the houses. And we just had a blast together, and Tom Skerritt was there, and Michelle Phillips, and some other actors that had went on to do some other things on TV. And he's, at the end of the party, said, I can get you a job on this. You want a job? Absolutely. So he got me a job working directly with the shooting crew and the actors. I was the actors and the shooting crew's translator at 15 years old. Didn't know what it meant to be a translator, but I was able to get their English into Portuguese and get the crew's Portuguese into English for them. And for me, my eyes just lit up, because that was like a mix of art and a mix of photography and a mix, like it was a dream come true. I knew that that's what I wanted to do at that point. And what was really out of control is that the animals on the show was Clarence the Cross-Eyed Lion. Do you remember Daktari?
Yep. Oh, I remember Daktari. Yeah.
Clarence the Cross-Eyed Lion was on this film. It was outrageous, just amazing. And it was the same family that trained Clyde, the orangutan, that was in the Any Which Way You Can.
Any Which Way You Can. Yeah.
The Clint Eastwood films. So it was the same family based in California that came down to do. They actually were going to do it in Africa, but when it came time to bring the lions in, the African government had a law that you can't reintroduce domesticated lions. I mean, they're still wild animals, but they were trained. Still dangerous creatures, because they're just so huge. So they were like, well, what looks like Africa? And actually Brazil, it does make sense, Pangea, when it's separated and all that, Africa and areas of Brazil are very similar in many respects. And so it worked out perfectly, and it was meant to be, because I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that everything is as it should be. And so that's what got me into the movie business, the business we call show. And then came back to the States and actually tried to get involved in production, but went back to high school, finished high school in Milwaukee. And then I didn't really see much entrance. I studied at Marquette because my dad taught there, so I could get in. I studied at Marquette. And they didn't have a strong film department, so I went to UW Milwaukee, and they had more of an independent film department that actually talked down on making money, making film. And so that kind of drove me out of that department at that point. But I had been teaching sailing at that point. When I came back to the States, I started sailing at the Community Sailing Center, and I was a sailing instructor there and loved teaching. It actually became something, apart from feeling that I would be an artist, that's when I actually started teaching people. And I discovered that I had an ability, more discovered it because some of the students, I did kids and adults. Some of the adults came and said, no one has ever been able to explain to me how to do this in a way that stuck. And you were able to give it to me in a way that I could understand. And so I started to realize that I felt like there's a gift to being able to give each person a perspective that enables them to succeed. And that to me was really amazing. That empowered me. That made me feel so good inside. And it really boosted my desire to teach and share and do whatever is possible in any way of my life, whatever which way I can. And so, and while I was teaching there, a Welshman who had a production company in Milwaukee came down to film for Wisconsin tourism. And he had the big 35 millimeter motion picture camera, because at that time it was still mostly motion picture for TV spots and all that. He was there with his partner, and I took them out to the break wall so they could film. I was there with one of my loudmouth buddies who always hung around at the sailing center because he had nothing better to do. And so when I went back to get them off the break wall, the tide had come up a little bit. It was a little rocky on the boat was rocking, and I'm here at the break wall, and he's standing there with the Arri 35-3 camera, not sure how to get back into the boat. And I said, "Here, you can give it to me." And he like hesitated because it's like $100,000 package that he had there. And my buddy's like, he's worked on movies. Just give him the camera. He can handle it. So he handed me the camera. I cradled it, and he got in the boat. And when we got to shore, he's like, "Hey, you want to come see my production company?" So I went and I visited the thing. He showed me his flatbed editing table because at the time everything was on work print, and he had a 6-plate chem editing table. And so he shows me how to load up the film, how to align the sync and all that stuff. He said, you got it? You understand? Want a job? I said, sure. And he said, here, all of these boxes here on the wall, I want you to code all of them so I know what's in the boxes, how many rolls, how many feet, do I have sync for it, and all that. And so I spent about a week just resyncing and coding all of his film. And after that, he's like, well, you can be full time with me. So I spent 2.5 years. And he took me, I helped him in all production. I helped him, he would take me down to the color corrections, the telecine sessions, which no one, like at my level as an assistant, no one was brought to those sessions. So I got 2.5 years of learning on how to color correct film, how to prepare. I was his assistant editor, I was his production assistant and all that. So it was an amazing, amazing, amazing time. And he was my friend, so it was cool. And we'd sail together and we'd hang out together and all that. And so that's what solidified it for me. And I started getting into production at that point, more in lighting. And so I went through all the different levels, lighting, moved to Chicago, moved up through lighting, worked on commercials, big national spots, worked on feature films as a grip, an electrician, and dolly grip, and all those different titles that people don't know what they do. I did all those moving up until I decided, well, I'm going to just start my own production company. And what's interesting, it's sort of a zombie thing, is the fact that I followed, even though I had success in my first year as a grip in Chicago, I made more money than my dad, who's a full doctoral professor.
Sure.
And to me, that was like, wow, I've arrived. I wasn't anywhere close, but I've arrived. I've made more than my dad.
Yeah, it's not a destination. It's not a destination. It's a journey every day, right? Yeah.
Well, and my upbringing, my dad was the first one in his family to go to college.
Yeah. And
that was huge for him. But he was essentially brought up through the ranks of, Catholic Irish family. His dad was a butcher. His dad's dad was a butcher. Really bad relationship with money, if you know what I mean. And not so much that they didn't have it. I mean, they didn't have a lot of it, but a bad relationship, that thing about like, oh, rich people have money and rich people, they're corrupt. It's like those classic money issues that really impede anyone from achieving a level of success and being blessed by the abundance that everyone can be blessed with, And so for me, starting the production company was the great classic error of young entrepreneurs, which is I started a production company to give myself a job.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no one around me to teach me, look, you need to turn this company into something that doesn't require you to be there. You need to if you want to be in production, you should develop a company that will grow even without you so that you can eventually not have to be there for it to happen. And so I went through the classic, it was textbook, all the things that I did, I was really successful, and each year grew and grew and grew. And even when everything started shifting from film to digital production, I was still growing really well, but there was no exit strategy. There was no path to true independence in the sense that I could let the company just take off and grow, and I could choose to do whatever I wanted. I was still a one-trick pony, basically.
Sure.
And that was, and everyone around me. And so as I started to learn more about the classics, Jim Rohn, Neville Goddard, even, I mean, the list goes on and on, but they're all showing these age-old truths about how you can attract abundance to you without actually having to struggle, because the struggling path will never really lead you to any abundance. It may lead you to money, but it won't lead you to abundance. And so that's where there was a transition that started to occur for me, where I started to look at really, what am I contributing? Making films is awesome and I love storytelling, but what am I really contributing to the world?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to be here for something much greater than making commercials and music videos and recording live shows and all of that. So that became a transitional point for me.
Sure. So when you got to that, so first of all, there's some incredible warrior nuggets, as I call them, warrior things. And obviously one of the biggest zombies people don't realize as you're on the journey, even if you are focused forward and on the journey and stuff, is that whole attribute of, okay, I found this, I'm successful at this. And then all of a sudden the world or the people around you you become them working, you're working for them. You don't gain that, as you call it, independence. One of the things you said early on was some of these things you discovered as you're in motion. That's the thing I always tell people. People will sit there and go, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know where I'm going. You have an unction, you have things. It's only as you start to see it unfold and you go back and look at your journey that you say, oh, this led to this. And this, I love the connection between the sailing and then the filmmaking, that whole thing. That was again, another, as your life unfolds, if you're paying attention, either, best real time, but even in retrospect, it's kind of a cool thing. The zombie of basically getting yourself painted into a corner or not really realizing the abundance that lies ahead if you stay true to your vision or whatever. And then it's a pretty common thing where it's what I love doing. That's why I'm known as a vision warrior, is I'm always wanting people to understand, why they're here on the planet, because we all have a unique reason. We all have a unique value. You have a unique collection of things. So any majors, I mean, I hear zombies in your mind. Obviously you're a warrior. Most of our warriors are always focused forward. They don't want to dwell on things, challenges, as we call zombies. Anything that really knocked your pins out along the way that you had to overcome?
One of the biggest things that occurred was when the production company, when Carnival Pictures was at one of its peaks. I would say its greatest peak. I had a producer that was working with me, but he was a freelancer. Like I always maintained the company as me being the sole employee, and all the rest were contractors, so I could scale infinitely.
Yeah,
that was a mistake. I should have had more staff. That would have been better. I can see that now. And I could have put systems in place. I tried putting systems in place, but I wasn't very good at it. And there was no one around me to show me how. And I wasn't smart enough, didn't have enough knowledge to go find the people that could help me actually develop the business into a very systematized and highly productive machine without my presence. And I see that now. I advise people on that now, and they look at me like, huh? No one's ever said that. What do you mean scalability? What do you mean? So it's something I learned firsthand. And what I found fascinating is that I had distanced myself from the functional elements when we had reached a point where it was like, what, for a Milwaukee production company doing well over $1 million in the year, and the
Mhm.
producer went total taker. He went to a total taker, and only later did I realize that he had basically stopped actually doing his job, like the
Huh.
job that he had been trained to do, and the documentation, the paperwork, and all that stuff. He stopped doing that months before, and I didn't see it because he was producing and wrapping the jobs, and I was just overviewing. I was still bidding the jobs, I was still closing the sales, I was still executing the projects from start to finish, and all of that. But and he was meanwhile he was working on my clients, and my key clients, he basically took them all away
Hmm.
because he would take them out and drink with them. He would take them all drinking and buy them drinks, and he was working on them for months. In fact, I had an art director who was a good friend of mine as well, but he was also a friend of his, and he was working on the art director. We were sort of a triangle team. I
Yeah.
had this art director who could do anything. I mean, I could say, here, this is what we need to do, and he would figure it out in a beautiful, gorgeous, and very efficient way. And he was working on him too. So for me, this was a huge lesson. It was crushing. It was devastating for me because
Mhm.
it basically put me to a standstill. He came to me and said, I want to become a partner. And I said, well, you don't need to become a partner. You could just tell me how much more. Do you want to be responsible for paying insurance? Do you want to be responsible for taxes? Do you want to be responsible for all these things? If you need more money, just put it in the budget. We're working on the budgets together. If you think you're not earning enough, let me know. He was getting paid at the level of what producers were being paid. And he was making more money than he ever made in his life. He had told me that. And it looked like he'd just continue to make more because we were going like that.
Right.
At a time when there were really only 5 or 6 companies in that area of Milwaukee metropolitan area that knew how to expose film. Like I had shot with Stephen Poster, who's a top. There was a phase when I was bringing in cinematographers from LA, but it just didn't end up. I didn't feel like I was actually getting what I wanted out of the final elements. Maybe because our budgets weren't at the level that the cinematographers were used to dealing with. But these were some really top-notch shooters. And so I started shooting because I knew how to shoot and all of that. And so there were only about 5 companies that knew how to expose motion picture film in Milwaukee. So I could pick up the phone, make 5 phone calls, and I'd have a well-paying job. So it was
Mhm.
really awesome time. It was a fantastic time. And I wasn't even a good salesperson. I had issues about like, what is sales? Like any salesman that really knew what they were doing would be like, you don't know how to do sales. You don't even have a process. You know, looking backwards, I didn't have any process. It just fell into my lap because there was a lot of work to be done and I could do it. And I was really versatile. So I would do live action, which I loved. I do special effects. I've shot on the water. I've shot in the air. I've shot, on stages. We've built garages. We made it snow inside for Optima batteries. We made it snow inside one garage stall for the Optima power top. And then we made it for the water battery, the blue one. We actually had a garage stall, and this was built in a warehouse where the garage door opens and there's a boat in the stall and there's water and he's pulling a live pike out and the pike is kicking and all that. I mean, like anything. You make the
Yeah.
script, we'll figure out how to do it. So it was a gorgeous time. But literally, he just swept away the clients in one fell swoop. I'm opening my own company. Like, okay, I'm taking Bill with me, the art director. Okay. And I'm taking the clients.
Wow.
Okay. And he had worked them so well that when I tried to have a conversation with the clients, they're like, oh, Jamie, all the things you said about me behind my back. Like, what? What? What things? What are you talking about? I love my clients. So for me, it was really awakening. It was a rude awakening. And maybe think about like what I actually had built, if I had built anything at all, really.
It's fascinating because, again, as warriors on the journey, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that the people who are bringing on the journey with us need to stay in sync with us, and that's always the case, in companies that are starting up and you're going, and unfortunately, being a giver like yourself, I know myself, you always got to kind of make sure you don't want to run your life that way, be looking over your shoulder, looking everybody's suspect, but it's kind of a hard thing. Well, let's do this. I want to get into the third segment here and kind of talk about, what you're doing today, why you're doing it, that kind of thing. And then we'll move forward. But anyway, this has been fascinating. I love the story. A lot of lessons there, and we'll keep moving. So let's hear another snippet for the audio audience of our theme song. It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with James O'Malley and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, James. I'm enjoying the ride, and I'm sure those listening are as well. But as I said before we took the break, let's talk about why you're doing what you're doing today. And obviously, I see a lot of value that you've developed and skills that you've achieved in your journey here. I can see a lot of application as a BeeKonnected expert and some of the things that you got going there. But tell me about what you're doing today.
Well, today is an amalgam of everything that, well, I guess life is that way, right? It's the journey. Mm-hmm. And all of these elements from this journey have come together in a really beautiful way, in a divine way that I could never have planned myself. All the experiences I have, when that all went awry back in Milwaukee, I had already started expanding toward Rio de Janeiro because at that time there were a lot of production companies that were doing co-productions with American ad agencies down in Brazil because the currency exchange was so great.
Right.
And I thought that was a natural. And so I set up a production company down there, and actually some of my clients brought projects down there to produce in Brazil. And so I put together a team of animators and graphic designers that I still work with today. And a lot of music videos we've done down here and other projects, corporate projects and the like. So I started the production company down here and started dividing my time between the US and Brazil, which from the standpoint of the US company was not terribly productive, because the minute they know that you're traveling, your competition says, oh no, Jamie's not around, he's down in Brazil working and all that. So I thought I was doing the right thing, but I didn't really understand the implications at that point, which was a lesson well learned. I don't regret anything that's happened to me, all the good or the bad. I don't regret a single thing that's ever happened. But what started to happen is, along with the productions, I started getting clients that were asking for help dealing with the fact that they were Brazilian natives, especially doctors. And it started with a federal judge. One of my friends who's a certified translator with the Department of State said, I've got a federal judge who is giving talks at the UN and he needs someone to coach him. And that's not something I do. That's what she said. That's not something I do. Would you be interested in talking to him? So I started with him. At that point, the idea of coaching was no more than the idea of teaching people that work with me in film how to be better in film, how to start their own companies, because I never wanted the people I worked with to just remain workers. I always tried to raise everybody up that I worked with and show them a path to becoming autonomous, because I think we've got to, right? We don't need people under us. We need people next to us and even above us. So I was always teaching that way. And so when I met him and we started working together on his PowerPoints and choosing words that he would be able to have success with, because some words are more difficult for someone that isn't a native English speaker to speak. And so that idea of teaching and training started to gel, and I felt so good helping people achieve success in that I started to focus more on coaching. And that was along came the pandemic, and that became a huge thing to have, because all production basically stopped during the pandemic. Film production pretty much dried up.
Mhm.
around the entire world. Like Netflix and some of these other companies were financing the local producers, giving them money to not go under while the pandemic was happening. They were giving them grants to keep them alive, which,
Wow.
yeah, shout out to Netflix, who gets a bad rap for underpaying people in the good times, really helped people survive in the bad times. So that's beautiful. But meanwhile, I was starting to do more and more and more of this and getting much better and knowing better, because they're telling me that they're having more and more success. And actually that whole thing about, if you provide more value, they will be embarrassed to not pay you more. And so my clients started actually paying me more, even though people around me are saying, raise your rates, you should double, triple, quadruple your rates. I'm like, I'm not ready to yet. It was maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, the idea, wow, I know there are people that are charging, $500 an hour to do this type of work. And, but my clients started actually paying me more.
Mhm.
Even though we had agreed on a rate, at the end of it, they're like, wow, this is the best presentation I've ever done. And just like showering me with more and starting to share my name with other people. And that was great validation for me.
Sure.
And so I started doing that, along with the fact that I was doing, during the pandemic, I was doing a variety of certifications, everything from Ho'oponopono and a dynamic speaker and financials and a whole bunch of things that I think everyone should learn in grade school. I was doing those at breakneck pace, just devouring it and seeing a transformation occurring. And so then a lifelong friend of mine, Mike Raber, who's also a BeeKonnected Elite 100 expert,
Right.
who was also in Givers University. He's a Givers University mentor. And we've been buddies since grade school. And we actually did our first business venture together when I was just an artist. I drew Christmas cards and had them printed, hand colored them, and we went off door to door selling Christmas cards and all. So we've been an entrepreneurial minded since childhood. He says, this was at the end of last year, he said, I've got two things I want to share with you. One is BeeKonnected, which I've joined, and it's really amazing, this amazing platform that we need to spread around for people to find out about. And it truly is. And so I came in and I got into the VIP bonus pool, and I haven't started a show yet. Now as an Elite 100, coach, I'll be doing the orientation shows, and we're really excited to see what's coming now is with what will be an influx of new members. And we're here to raise them all up, get them active, and empower them to use this powerful platform to really transform their business and also build their networks. So that's the huge thing right now that's going on. And so really excited about that. I know you're involved with that as well, David.
Yep. Well, like you say, early on in your story, you were saying, I look at things and things become a job. And the alignment comes when you really realize the fact that I retired with a 7-digit income at the top of my game. I actually spent some time in Sao Paulo, by the way. So I working with the company. So I do know a little bit. I don't know any Portuguese, but I do know a lot of people who speak Portuguese. But the fascinating thing about your journey is that I think we realize that life is too short not to have the impact that you want to have. And it doesn't matter if you're trading your time for $1 million a year, or you're trading it for $20 an hour or whatever it is. Your time is your most valuable asset, right? Getting return on that. The beauty of BeeKonnected, and it's not only is it not a social media platform, which I think you would understand being in the media part. It's really, we're not trying to keep people on. We're trying to help people do business. And I think being an Elite 100, you also understand that we're trying to create that social business environment that doesn't really exist out there, at least unadulterated, because of all of the motivation, the taker mentality, if you will, of the larger companies in terms of wanting to keep you there for their purposes, feed you dopamine, give you things that you want to say to keep you on the platform so that they can sell you stuff. And, that's, I don't have a problem buying or selling myself, but I work with people I trust. And it's such a hard thing to do. Whereas BeeKonnected, we can do this. I can serve you. You can serve me. We can begin to build that. So if anything were possible, and by the way, I believe everything is possible, if you could bring it to a head here, what kind of impact are you hoping to have with what you're doing today?
I believe one of the greatest things lacking today, one of the greatest obstacles that I hope to be able to help break down or get past, is the fact that there is so much distrust and cynicism that may be a result of the overwhelm, the static that surrounds us with the amount of information that's available.
Absolutely.
The distrust of what's this information, the incredible fear mongering that is built into this information, which is indeed holding people back from being able to explode with everything that they have, because everybody has amazing things to share. Even the people that I interact with that don't think they have anything worth saying, and so they say things that mean nothing. They share the meaningless instead of looking inside to share that unique thing that they have brought here, because everyone has something really profound to offer. So if I can help people in one way or another look inward so that they can be comfortable with that which they have, and all the external forces are trying to make you look outward and think that everything's out there, that none of this that's in here is worthwhile, and that you will never achieve that which is out there, that big, the glitzy social media success story, much of which is just an absolute facade.
Absolutely.
It's if people can look inside and help them to be able to see the uniqueness of what they have to offer and not be bothered by all of the noise that's saying that, oh no, you just need to pay attention to this, you need to like this, you need to follow this, and be a good employee and just show up on time and do your thing, and then someday you'll retire. And that's, I would like to be part of breaking that down and enabling people, empowering people to be able to figure out how to raise up what they have to offer, the uniqueness, and put it out there. Because there are certainly many, many, many people out there that are waiting, are needing what each person has to offer. And I see BeeKonnected as an opportunity for that.
Yep.
But it's only givers like David. You are the consummate giver. You are a massive success story, retired early, wouldn't need to be doing this. You don't need to be here. You're here because you give. And that's what we need, is more people that choose to be there to give, so that everyone can be everything they're meant to be. And it's a tall task. It's a tall task. If I can do a little bit of it, if I can affect some lives, I will have succeeded much more than decades of film production.
Well, I love it, James, and thank you for the kind words. My life purpose today is to change the world one dream at a time, and it's not, a mass message, but although I want to get people's story out, nobody should die with their story still in them, and I love the fact that you see that, you want to see that happen, and I love the focus on really getting people's woken up and building that trust in a way that people can truly begin to impact those around them. Well, let's do this. I hate to say it, but we need to get into what I call the land the plane segment, maybe as a factor of my 4 million miles on airlines. But we're going to get a land the plane, and we'll come back, and I want to hear of all the stuff we've talked about. And by the way, we've covered a lot of ground. If there's one thing you want us to take away from here, and you may have already said it, but let's make sure we don't forget, and then we'll talk about how to stay in touch. So let's take another quick break here, the final segment, snippet of It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with the Land the Plane segment and James O'Malley. All right, James, this has been a lot of fun. And again, thank you for the kind words. It's always nice to hear acknowledgement or validation that some of the things you're hoping to do, people see it. Don't always feel that way. You know how that goes. But so, as I said before the break, if we take away anything, what would you want us to take away from this podcast?
I think that each person needs to spend more time with themselves, alone, without a cell phone in their hands, without a TV on, maybe with a book, but also without a book, with you alone, and see if you're able to be there alone. Because what I've noticed in all of my years is that the biggest obstacle to finding out why you're here is the inability to be by yourself. Be by yourself lucid, sober, without and paying attention to what is like, who's thinking that thought? What is that thought? Because if we can't turn off everything that's outside, it's going to be really hard to listen to the voices inside and dismiss or release with love the negative voices or the voices that want to reduce or make you feel insignificant or incapable. You know, those, and if you're constantly listening to things, if you're constantly hearing other people, if, you know, not even to talk about the people that surround you, you know, what are they saying to you? But if you can't be alone, how can you ever allow the inner voice to make itself heard and to allow you to sift through the sounds that aren't uplifting? And the rest, like, we could talk about business, we could talk about all sorts of different things, but really, to me, it is, can you be alone with yourself? Take 5 minutes. You'll be amazed at how long 5 minutes alone with yourself will feel like if you're not used to it. You're like 1 minute, you're like, really? It's only been like 30 seconds? You know, and to me, that is the beginning. That's the first step to personal success, to a new journey, to a new way of life, is spend some time alone.
Wow. I love that, because all I can tell you is that is a zombie attribute, is moving forward in somebody else's intention and not your own. And the only way to figure out your own intention is to really get with yourself. One of the reasons why I'm on this BeeKonnected platform, what inspires me, and by the way, I don't believe in motivation, and I don't for sure believe in manipulation. I believe in inspiration. And I believe that through this podcast, through the things that we do, through anything that we endeavor, we should hope that we've inspired some people to do some things that, number one, will move them towards their dream. Not my dream for them, but their dream for themselves. And so that's the only way you can discover that, as you point out very clearly. And I would agree with you. That's one of the most important takeaways in anything you've said here, is that be prepared to get within yourself, because all of those forces, all of the media, social media, the world around us, politics, all those things, they're all designed to overwhelm you to where you can't be with yourself. And so that's such a brilliant warrior lesson, warrior point. So tell me, James, how do we stay in touch? You're absolutely on the BeeKonnected platform. And I know you've got a group here, and I know you're an Elite 100 coach. And I know if people get on the platform, they can reach out to James B. O'Malley and they can find you. The good news is there's what, 20, 30,000, whatever, now people on the platform. It's not millions. It will be millions shortly, which is one of the reasons we're actually pretty energized here. But tell me, how else do we stay in touch? Any other ways?
Yeah, the simplest way, because my name, James Patrick O'Malley, James Patrick O'Malley. So find me on Instagram. It's literally at James Patrick O'Malley. And there are other ways to reach me through there, but Instagram will be the cleanest, clearest. You can send me a direct message and let's connect. I would love to talk. Anyone that was moved to want to ask a question or talk, I would love to share time with them. And
Right.
find me on BeeKonnected as well.
Yeah, that's
BeeKonnected.
absolutely the easiest way. That's what there's so much noise. I mean, I've got hundreds of thousands of connections across all of the platforms. So it's not like I'm finding a way to finally reach people. No, it's that there's so much noise there. There's so much, it's so much confusion. You can't get clear, and you can't get a clear access. Whereas on this platform, we can. So if you don't understand that, if you're listening to this podcast, feel free to join for free. And you can find this replay on the platform of the audio, the live replay. You'll hear it on all the audio platforms. But James, it's been awesome. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your vision. And I just really appreciate you, brother. And I'm looking forward to our journey together as we keep going.
Thank you so much, David. It was a blast being on your show. I hope to have something to share, to come back somewhere down the road where we can talk again. And I really appreciate all the time and the energy and the love that you've put into this show and into bringing me on. Thank you so much. Much gratitude.
It's my pleasure. And thank you again. Well, guys, we're going to have to land the plane. For those listening, we've completed another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. Again, you can find all platforms. By the way, James, you may get another opportunity, because I'm launching another podcast called Triggered by Warrior versus Zombie, and where we come up with topics. It'll be more topical and really drilling into, and I'll bring previous warrior guests or other warriors to talk about things that really inspired me in those discussions. So who knows? Well, got to land the plane. We'll be back next Friday at same time, 11 Central, or what is it, 1 p.m. your time in Rio de Janeiro. And we'll be back for another episode and another warrior on Warrior versus Zombie. Let's hear the outro of It's Not the Getting There.